So again, welcome to all of you. We're so glad that you could join us today for our special summer series presentation. I'd like to introduce you to our featured speaker, who is Dr. Vivien Wen. And she is an associate professor here at Rutgers School of Social Work and the scientific director for video gaming and eSports at our Center for Gambling Studies. A little bit about Dr. Anthony. Her research centers on addictions with a focus on gaming disorder, problem internet use, internet gambling, and other problematic behaviors related to technology use. Her research interests stem from her practice and research experience with youth and young adults in China and the US. And in her past and current studies, she's adapted and pilot tested mindfulness-based intervention and cognitive behavioral-based intervention for problems among youth and young adults. And she currently studies an emerging area, the convergence of video gaming and gambling and the implications of such convergence. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Anthony.
Thank you, Laura, for the introduction, and a good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to share about my research with our students. So first, before my presentation, I'd like to take a little bit amount of time to get to know you a little bit. So if you could let me know about your status in the chat. What I mean is if you're about to start your MSW, or you currently have completed 1 year of a coursework, or you're about to graduate. So just if you can share about your status with me in the chat, that will be very helpful to me. Okay, thanks. And I do see some of you are undergraduate, second year MSW, about to graduate, first year. All right, so I'm really glad to know that we have quite a diverse crowd here. And some of you are incoming students, so welcome. All right, so thank you, everyone. So I hope today's topic will be interesting to you. And so now I'm going to share the slides. Okay. Does everyone see the shared screen of my slide? Okay, yes, thank you. All right. Okay, so the topic of my talk today is problematic technology use as a type of a behavioral addiction. And this is a very small, unique topic under social worker research. So I would like to share the research from this topic, as well as how the research we do that can help to inform in social work of practice and a policy. All right, so you have learned a lot about me from Laura's introduction. So I do research problem interactive technology use, including problem video gaming as a type of a behavioral addiction. I'm associate professor at the school, and also the scientific director at our Center for Gambling Studies. And in addition to that, I would like to tell you that I do like playing video games as well. So on this slide, I also shared a book chapter that I recently wrote for the Routledge Handbook of Social Work and Addictive Behaviors. So there's a chapter that I wrote with my colleagues introducing problematic technology use as a type of behavioral addiction with implications for social work practice. So if you're interested in learning more about this topic, feel free to reach out to me after today's session. I'm happy to share the book chapter with you. Also, so I would like to use this opportunity to tell you more about our Center for Gambling Studies. So the Center for Gambling Studies is founded in 2007, and our center is the only gambling studies center housed in the School of Social Work, and one of a few such centers in the US and the world. So our research focuses primarily on behavioral addictions, including problem and excessive gambling, video gaming, and other interactive technology use, as well as comorbid substance-based addiction and mental health issues. So we collaborated with our ACT program, the addiction counseling training program. So for our current students, some of you may already know about this ACT program, or you are with our ACT program. So collaborating with the ACT program, we provide training to social workers and other health professionals about policies and clinical works related to gambling and video gaming problems, which are emerging issues, especially in New Jersey. All right, so couple of the topics, so like subtopics that I will discuss during today's talk. So first, I will say a little bit about interactive technology use, and a second, we will take a look at what is the problematic interactive technology use, and then more relevant to social work practice, what are some of the research findings in terms of assessment, screening, as well as intervention. All right, so first let's talk about interactive technology use. So I'm sure all of us are very familiar with interactive technology, right? So which is a necessary part of a contemporary life. So largely due to the use of smartphones, constant access to the internet, and increasingly immersive video games and social media. So access to the internet is critical to all of us for education, socialization, paying bills, shopping, entertainment, pretty much everything in our life. So for example, we all here in this Zoom setting that I give you a presentation and you are listening to my presentation. This is how we, example that we use the interactive technology for education, right? And so in addition to the form of interactive technology that we're familiar with, such as social media, video games, internet, online streaming media has become increasingly popular in the past couple of years. So for example, Twitch.tv is one of the most popular platforms for young people to watch all sorts of content, but most of the content are video gaming focused. So just here are some of the statistics and data about technology adoption and usage, right? So in the past 30 years, when we started to have internet use, broadband adoption, and smartphone ownership have grown rapidly for all Americans. So in early 2000, about 20 years ago, only about half of adults in America had access to the internet, but in 2021, more than 90% of American adults have access and use the internet. And then video games have already become one of the major entertainment, not just for younger generations. So we adopt the video games to different interactive media platforms. So not just for entertainment, but we're also using video games to inform online learning, to make content more engaging, right? So often video games are also used for education purpose in addition to entertainment. So here in the middle of this slide, you can see who are Americans and video gamers, right? So the average age of the video game players is around 35 years, and the gender stereotype about gamers are disappearing. So we're not only looking at young males who play video games. Actually, there's a large variety of audiences for video games. So, and then of course, social media usage, right? So social media particularly help us to connect with the world, especially during times such as the pandemic shutdown period. So on the right of this slide, you could see a clear trend of increasing social media usage among various apps and sites. So on this slide, it's a little bit more statistics and data of the trend of teens, adolescents, and interactive technology use. So younger generations have a higher usage of interactive technology, particularly social media. So as shown in the, so all the statistics are from the Pew Research report on teens, social media, and technology in 2022. And so as the report has shown that teens primarily use the technology to pass time, connect with people, and obtain new information. But like, I like to highlight that 36% of teens say they spend too much time on social media. So as the increasing adoption of a technology use, there's also an increasing concern that some people, particularly teens, children, adolescents, develop this persistently repeated, excessive, compulsive, and problematic patterns of interactive technology use, so such as excessive social media use, video gaming playing, etc. So what we're really concerned about are the potential harms associated with the problematic patterns of interactive technology use. So some countries like China and South Korea have identified internet, smartphone, and video game addictions as a significant public health concern for children and youth. In other countries, we also do see cases that report problematic and addictive internet and technology use from media, clinical work, and research. So because the compulsive and problematic patterns of interactive technology use share a similar behavioral symptoms compared to those for substance-based addiction, many scholars and clinicians conceptualize these problems as a type of a behavioral addiction. So for those of you who already had some of the coursework on addiction, you are more familiar with a substance-based addiction, which is what we talked more often in our course, but also we do have another umbrella term of a behavioral addiction. So the similar symptoms between the behavioral addiction and a substance-based addiction include a lack of control of usage or a lack of control of engagement in certain behaviors, and the withdrawal symptoms defined as the feeling of irritation, anxiety, and sad when cannot access the technology or this behavior. Loss of interest in relationships and activities other than the use of the smartphone, social media, or video gaming. And also some of the similar symptoms that we observe is continuing using despite awareness or knowledge of the harms caused by the problematic or excessive technology use. So problematic interactive technology use is an umbrella term, includes a variety of various behaviors that would include internet use, smartphone use, social media use, video gaming. So typically, problem of video game playing draws the most attention in the bucket of problematic use of interactive technology. So due to the rising concerns of a problem gaming and the consensus on classifying gaming disorder as a type of a behavioral addiction, the DSM-5 first proposed the internet gaming disorder as a condition for further study. So for those of you who already had a coursework, you may have certain familiarities with DSM and DSM-5, and this is one of the important manual social workers are using to make a clinical assessment and the diagnosis. So again, like what I said, the DSM-5 first proposed internet gaming disorder as a condition for further study, and also the DSM-5 proposed 9 criteria in the diagnosis, including preoccupation, tolerance, withdrawal, loss of control, loss of interest in other activities, previous hobbies, continuing gaming despite the adverse effects, lying to others or hiding the amount of the gaming, using gaming as a mood modification or escaping, avoidant type of coping, and also negative consequences due to associated with excessive and problematic gaming.
All of this every day.
So the DSM-5 criteria is developed or conceptualized based on the criteria used to diagnose substance use disorders as well as gambling disorders. So soon after the APA DSM-5 proposed the internet gaming disorder as a condition to be considered, the International Classification of Diseases, ICD-11 by World Health Organization, WHO, officially recognized the gaming disorder as a mental health problem. So the ICD-11 describes the gaming disorder as a pattern of a persistent or recurrent gaming behavior. So manifested by impaired control over gaming, increasing priority giving to gaming to the extent that gaming takes over other life interests and the daily activities, and a continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences, emphasizing that the behavior pattern is of a sufficient severity to result in significant impairment in personal, family, social, educational, occupations, or other important areas of functioning. So the diagnosis described in ICD-11 about a problem gaming emphasizes repetitive use of a video game, which leads to significant functional impairment. So that's to say, in order to assess or diagnose problem gaming, clinical observation of a significant functional, psychosocial functional impairment is an important symptom. So that's to say, there's no need to be panicked. It's just because someone is playing a lot of video games as a hobby, or especially when they train to be a professional or eSports player. So that's to say this symptom is very helpful for clinical assessment. So one of the research we engage or I engage in this area is to develop instruments or measures that can assess and screen for problem video gaming based on these proposed diagnostic criteria. And also we conduct research to evaluate the performance of the developed measures, right? So for those of you already had a research one in our program, you may already have some knowledge about the validity and reliability of the measures and why those psychometric properties matters when we use them for practice, right? So for example, I have published a systematic review that identified and evaluated the 22 measures developed based on the DSM-5 IGD criteria I just showed you in the previous slide. So this work or this paper is to identify the most optimal instrument or tool that can be used for both research and clinical practice. So again, a lot of research and work to date is about problem of video gaming. But there are also works around other types of problematic interactive technology. So such as the problematic social media use, which is definitely another emerging concern that we have. So especially you all probably have heard a lot about the TikTok, the harms of excessive and problematic TikTok use, right? So the description of a problematic social media usage largely overlap with a framework of other types of addiction, so manifested by the following behaviors or symptoms, such as spending a lot of time thinking about the use of social media, feeling an urge to use more and more, using social media in order to forget about a personal problem, trying to cut down on the use without success, becoming restless or troubled if someone is prohibited from using social media and using social media so much that it has a negative impact on your job or school performance. So another area of the research that we do or I do in this area is to identify the using the empirical data in the research to show the potential harm. Right? So the potential harms are why we have concerns about excessive and problematic interactive technology use. And so a large amount of research has found that people with the problematic technology use often exhibit like signs of impaired physical health issue, mental health issue, behavioral problems. So here, I like to highlight that distracted driving can cause severe harm. And so a number of observational studies found that a crash risk was 2 to 6 times greater when drivers were using a cell phone compared with when they were not distracted. So when look at the distracted driving by age group, there was a significant increase in crash risk for drivers under 30 years old and the drivers over 64. And in addition, people with a problematic interactive technology use often experience interpersonal problems, conflicts, poor academic and job performance, and financial debt or financial loss in some cases. So to contextualize the potential harms that I just mentioned, I would like to share some quotes from a focus group that I have conducted with college students some years ago about the problematic technology use. So in the focus group, students described adverse effects of their excessive internet and smartphone use, including harm to their physical health, so such as sleep deprivation and interrupted sleep. So for example, this student said, I think lack of sleep, I know even when I'm done with work, it's like a 12 or 1, I'll be up to like 3 because I'm doing some random stuff on the internet. So I guess this may be some familiar to many of us. So also lack of exercise due to excessive internet or smartphone use. So for example, Nancy, one student said that I'll plan to exercise like I'll sit there, keep reading stuff on my phone, and they're like, too bad that I didn't get to exercise. So also, I guess like this is another form of procrastination. And also students talked about the impact on their posture. So when students said that our generation has pretty bad posture due to typing a lot and sitting. And then some students in my focus group discussed that how their mood and emotions can be negatively impacted by things they see on the internet. So for example, one student, Christina, said that the first thing of the day is to get on Facebook or Twitter. If I hear something stupid, it will annoy me the rest of the day. So I have to say that happened to me quite often. So other students reported experiencing the negative feelings associated with comparing themselves to other people's posts on the internet, and particularly the feeling about fear of missing out. So for example, one student, Jack, said, usually most of the people post the best part of their life. Actually, so half the time you're going there and just to see like, oh, I'm having so much fun and I'm at the beach partying with hot girls, and you're like, I'm in my dorm room and I'm working at a McDonald's. I doubt their life is much better than mine, but when I'm already depressed and get on the internet and see that, I'm like, yeah, mine, I suck, right? So we, in the focus group and other research, we did observe this type of feelings and moods a lot. And students also commented on the potential harms to their academic performance, such as losing the ability to concentrate, developing a habit of a procrastination, which affected their work quality. So for example, Andrew said, my schoolwork has suffered a lot from internet use. Being on the internet is like you're procrastinating so much. Eventually you get to the point that I need to get this down. You're just not all the way there. And of course, the research cares about why and how someone develop a problematic and addictive pattern of use, right? We all use the internet, doesn't really mean we all have a problem. Only a very small amount of people do develop problems, and we need to understand why and how, right? Like how much of a risk do some people have in their pattern of use or in their behaviors? So those are the questions that we study as social worker researchers. So on this slide, I will just briefly describe 3 theories that could help us to understand how problematic use happens. And a lot of times in our social work coursework, we do teach students certain theories, because the theories would help us to understand the underlying issue, the underlying factors, and then we can identify the protective and the risk factors in those underlying mechanisms that help us to address the issue, right? So the first set of theory is the neurocognitive changes. So if you're interested in the ACTA program and addiction, the neurocognitive changes associated with addiction is a very important piece for us to understanding addiction, including behavioral addiction. So following neurocognitive the perspective neurocognitive changes associated with addiction. So the use of interactive technology, such as playing video games, watching TikTok videos, can activate similar brain regions associated with the reward system as those for psychoactive drugs. So those are empirical data to show us the brain regions that can be activated. by the interactive technology use. So the activation of the brain's dopaminergic system can increase our sensitivity to rewards from the content, like from video games, from social media content, and other stimuli. So we know that many of these websites, apps, and the video games are designed to increase sensation-seeking behavior and a sustained engagement. So for that reason, we spend a prolonged periods of time to obtain short-term rewards and excitement, or to relieve stress and the negative emotions. So excessive use are also associated with impaired neurocognitive functioning across the various domains, including increases in impulsivity and a cognitive bias, and the decreases in behavioral response inhibition related to enhanced brain activity in our prefrontal area. So these impairments could lead to impulsive and a compulsive use, and make us start to lose control over use, right? So with the neurocognitive perspective, we can understand why certain behaviors happen as a result of the changes in certain brain functions. And also, the interactive technologies can provide a personalized media that we can engage at our convenience despite the limitation of time and location. So interactive media could also track our information and recommend personalized content through algorithms that can better attract our attention, create a gratifying experience, and foster habit of using more and more, right? Doesn't sound like the typical experience with like social media platforms such as TikTok, right? So that is to say, we obtain gratifying experiences by using interactive technologies such as gaining novel information and entertainment, developing social networks, and avoiding or alleviating boredom, loneliness, and other negative feelings. So these gratifying experiences facilitate positive outcome expectancies that we expect our smartphones, social media platforms, video games will offer and relief from a problem, or a solution to form intimate relationships that cannot be achieved in real world, and the feelings of the value that can easily be attained within a virtual online community. So the outcome expectancies reinforce our use and further create wrong beliefs, such as overvaluing our involvement of online activities relative to other life domains, and overly relying on technology use as an avoidant coping. So according to the cognitive behavior model, so for those of you already had your HUBSE, the Human Behavior and Social Environment course, you probably have some exposure to cognitive behavioral model, which is one of the very important theory in social work practice that will guide social work practice. So according to the cognitive behavioral model, those who lack positive coping strategies, social skills and support, and self-regulatory ability are more likely to cultivate those wrong beliefs that only internet, smartphones, social media, video games can meet certain psychological and social needs, and overly rely on using the interactive technology as outlets to avoid stress and the negative emotions, and then relying on the technology and media use as a primary or exclusive coping over time leads to the development of a problematic use characterized as spending lengthy, unproductive time, diminished control over use, and recurrent use despite the harm. So with all the research, trying to understand this behavior, this problem behavior, that to define this behavior, to assess and screen for this problem behavior, as well as understanding the protective risk factors, as well as potential harms of this behavior. The ultimate goal of all of this research is to develop intervention and prevention programs that can be used in clinical work that help us to address these emerging issues. So because we tend to conceptualize problematic interactive technology use as a behavioral addiction, so the interventions developed for substance and gambling disorders could be used to inform targeted approaches to address like problem video gaming, problematic social media use. So especially because those interactive technology forms are a healthy and a necessary activity in our daily life. So harm reduction rather than abstinence-based approach to treatment is recommended. So with a harm reduction framework, we could shift the treatment goal toward facilitating a responsible and a healthy pattern of video gaming, internet use, social media use. So with the goal of a harm reduction, I have done research with two intervention strategies. One is modified from a cognitive behavioral therapy, and one is adapted from mindfulness-based intervention. So with both of the CBT and the mindfulness-based interventions, several underlying factors that contribute to these problem behaviors are important. Right? So one is the motivation. So people use interactive technologies for various reasons, right? So particularly the research identified that for people who play video games, playing video games for any reason not directly associated with the pleasure of gaming itself places people at risk for problems. So especially the research identified that stronger motivations to compete through video gaming or using video games as a means to cope are strong predictors of problems. And also, one of the important targets to be addressed in interventions are maladaptive cognition, right? So people who develop based on a cognitive behavioral framework we just discussed, people who develop internalized maladaptive cognitions or wrong beliefs towards interactive technology use are at a risk of developing problems. Right. So, for example, one research identified a list of maladaptive cognitions under for those who have problems with excessive and problem video gaming. So some of the examples here of those maladaptive cognitions, including overvaluing video games involvement relative to other life domains, right? So for example, someone thinks video gaming rewards or experiences matter more than rewards or experiences outside of video games from other aspects of life. And also, if someone feels they're only worthy in the video games and they are worthless when they're out of video games or when they're offline off the internet, that's a typical maladaptive cognition that could contribute to the development of a problem. And if people over relying on interactive technology for social acceptance or for intimate social relationships, that could be another underlying factor that could contribute to problems. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be used to modify individuals' maladaptive cognitions, as well as modify escape-oriented coping styles in order to enhance self-advocacy and life social skills to better regulate the use of the interactive technology. So applying the therapeutic components of CBT, I have developed and pilot tested a brief CBT-based intervention to address problematic internet use and smartphone use behaviors. So here is the outline of the 6 topics addressed in this brief CBT-based intervention. So including enhance awareness of and a motivation to change problem gaming, modify maladaptive cognition, identify alternative ways for coping to develop a positive coping, develop social support and social skills, to increase the self-regulation and self-monitoring skills, and identify relapse and developing a plan for relapse prevention. So when I designed this intervention, each session have a specific agenda and following a prescribed pattern to address these 6 core topics. So for example, session 2 aims to increase awareness of maladaptive cognition. So in this session, clients are first introduced to the concept of adaptive and maladaptive cognition using a cognitive model for situation level formulation through a case analysis. So then the clients are encouraged to identify their own maladaptive beliefs and thoughts about their technology use, such as gaming, social media use. So here, clients can practice to apply the situation level formulation model to understand the relationships among environmental factors, physical reactions, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So finally, clients are introduced to cognitive restructuring techniques and apply the techniques to modify the maladaptive cognition they identified earlier. So I specifically also designed exercises for clients to practice learned strategies and skills between sessions. So for example, clients will be asked to keep a daily log to record the amount of use with regard to the amount of time spent using, playing, frequency of using or playing video games. They're also asked to keep a daily log to record the situations, thoughts, mood, and emotions when they have an urge to engage in technology use. So this exercise helped them to identify triggers and practice learn the cognitive restructuring technique when needed. So when I piloted this intervention with university students in China, this exercise has received the most positive comments, and students who participated in the pilot study commented that the daily log is really helpful for them to be aware of their use and be aware of what are necessary use versus unwanted or unplanned use, and what are some of the consequences. And also they're able to identify the triggers, such as the emotions and environments that increase their desire of those unwanted use. And with those increased awareness, that they are able to apply learned coping skills that help them to engage in alternative activities rather than spending unproductive time on their smartphones or internet or video games. So I have also adapted a mindfulness-based intervention. So this mindfulness-based intervention is adapted from the a well-established, developed treatment manual called the Mindfulness-Oriented Recovery Enhancement, which is developed by Dr. Eric Garland for substance use disorder at Utah University. So The adapted treatment, the mindfulness-based treatment, includes 8 weekly 2-hour group sessions. And so the intervention teaches clients about mindful awareness of autopilot, addictive gaming behaviors, coping with a negative affective state through the practice of a mindful reappraisal instead of a video gaming, enhancing positive affective states through mindful savoring of a pleasant daily experiences, increasing awareness of a craving and the use of a mindfulness to cope with craving. Also, this treatment to teach stress reduction through the practice of a mindful relaxation, acceptance of rather than suppression of unwanted thoughts and distressing experiences. This also helps teach skills to help to decrease interpersonal stress through the practice of loving kindness and meditation. And also this treatment will help clients to develop a plan to use mindfulness skills to regulate excessive gaming and facilitate a healthy pattern of gaming. So I have piloted this mindfulness-based intervention also with college students who identified with the problem of video gaming behavior. And so this is actually my doctoral dissertation work. And then we found that the mindfulness-based intervention is effectively not just reducing problem gaming, but also increase positive coping cognitive reappraisal skills and positive coping skills. So also social work practice emphasize on addressing the problem behaviors from a multi-level system. So in that case, when working with clients, we should also consider incorporating collaborating with the client's family and other social support. Okay, so and to sum up, the goal of my scholar work is to inform and equip our mental health services with effective screening and intervention tools that can address severe cases of a problematic technology use. So mental health service providers need to understand these emerging behavioral issues and are able to screen and detect the misuse of interactive technology, media among clients and families. So it is also important to equip service providers and mental health practitioners with evidence-based screening tools and intervention strategies. So if you are interested in further discussing this topic, or you are interested in my research or assessment interventions for these emerging issues, so here are ways to contact me. And also you can find some of my publications on ResearchGate. So I welcome you for questions and comments. All right. So let me stop sharing. Sorry, I cannot find a button to stop sharing. Oh, there you go. Okay, so that's what I'm sharing with you today. And let's see, do you have any questions or comments or thoughts you would like to share with us? Again, thank you for being here to be in this session.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
What would you say is the most common kind of hurdle that you have to overcome with a client who's dealing with this kind of addiction?
What is the biggest hurdle?
Yeah, like most common or maybe the biggest kind of issue you see repeating itself in this type of clientele?
Good question. So from my work, I would say like the biggest hurdle sometimes is to have the understanding awareness of this problem, because technology, interactive technology, no matter a smartphone, internet, and video games are so universally accessible in our life. So a lot of people do not really have awareness or understanding that they may have a problem. So that's to say, motivational interviewing technique can be used to help to navigate.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I'm also trying to think, like, is it, has it reached a point in client cases where they're seeking support like in a mandated type of way, where they haven't accepted that they need help, but for some reason they're sitting in, you know, with a therapist to receive addiction support, and they have to work on, you know, I'm trying to compare it to someone who has a substance use issue.
Right. So that's a very good thought. I would definitely see both sides when I work with people. I definitely have seen clients who are seeking treatment on themselves, like they're really having a problem controlling their use, which affected their daily life and their work. But also most of the cases that I have seen are teenagers who were referred to treatment by their parents. It's more of their parents think the children have a problem, not the children themselves.
Yeah, I get it. Like the fact that they're minors is what kind of controls their participation.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you so much. It's very interesting.
I also have a question. I saw some of the studies for like proposed criteria are from as far back as like 2013. And I'm wondering your thoughts on like why it isn't more widely publicized or like really in the DSM. Because like speaking from someone in a substance abuse treatment facility where I'm at work right now, like with insurance purposes, there's no diagnosis. So people aren't able to come here for that.
Yeah, very good question. That's definitely one of the issues in practice with the problem technology use, especially problem gaming, is because there's no formal diagnosis. That's why it's hard to have practice or intervention that accept insurance. So one aspect is because the DSM panel still think we do not have adequate empirical evidence to have a consensus or agreement in terms of a diagnostic criteria. And as a matter of fact, the systematic review that I introduced, I shared with you in my slides that I have had published last year, also pointed at the issue that DSM-5. So although DSM-5 proposed 9 criteria, there could be, it is possible that those are not the most 9 prominent symptoms or behaviors that we can use to accurately diagnose problem gaming, or as well as other problem interactive technology. And on the different aspect is DSM APA panel and the ESM panel are very cautious about over pathologizing problem behaviors as well. So that's why since 2013, the IGD, the Internet Gaming Disorder, has been proposed and has been very cautious moving forward with this work. And also there's still a large disagreement on what are the criteria should be used to assess problem gaming. hopefully this
Okay,
is
that makes
address your
sense.
question. Yeah.
No,
So
that's it. Thank you.
I personally do hope we can move this area forward, because we do see more and more people do need this type of service and help. And so without consensus on some kind of a diagnostic criteria, it's hard to regulate the services as well. Do we have other questions?
Yeah, Dr. Anthony, I just wanted to ask, the presentation was really interesting, but would you see more of a problem behavior if people were, say, coming in for depression, anxiety, lack of sleep, because, of that circumstance or situation, rather than I have a gaming addiction, so this is more of a comorbid type of need that they have to identify or address.
Mhm.
So that evidence that you present, I think gives that as a possible cause. Or
Yeah, that's a good thought. It's a lot of times those are the mental health issues, other behavioral problems, and a problem social media use, internet use, gaming are comorbid or co-occurring. So that's to say that when working with clients that have a higher risk of having those problems, if they come in for other issues such as lacking sleep, sleeping problems, mental health problems, you may do want to assess their technology use to see if those are co-occurring issues, or those are some of the cause to their mental health and a physical issue that needs to be addressed simultaneously.
all right, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So yes, so thank you again for being this session. And see, there's 1 minute left. And do we have perhaps one more question? If not, oh, sorry, Laura. If not, I will put my email address in the chat box. So if you have any questions, thoughts in the future, feel free to contact me.